Is your host, Brannon Howes.
And good evening. Welcome to the broadcast on this April 11th, 2025. Happy birthday, Logan House, April 11th, 2025. And we got a big show for you tonight. Hey, do you guys remember, Leo Holman's going to join us here in a minute. We're going to be joined by a first-time guest, Mark Shaw. And we're going to be joined by, who else do I have? Logan or Caleb? Who else? Naughton, right? Yep, he's going to. Mark Naughton is going to join us from New Jersey about the ICE. ICE people are not going to get any help from the government up in New Jersey, and apparently one of Trump's lawyers has just been named the district attorney up there. Helena, is that her name? The one that was his attorney and known for helping him with his cases all last year, right? She's going up there to try to straighten things out because the state of New Jersey doesn't want to do diddly squat when it comes to helping the government round up all the illegals. But New Jersey is quickly falling to the Islamists. We'll get into that tonight. Like I said, we have Mark Shaw on, first-time guest. He's the author of many books. Do you guys remember Dorothy Gilgallen? Dorothy Gilgallen? She was a very famous columnist. She was also on that show, What's Your Line? Younger people don't know who I'm talking about unless you research these kind of topics. But anyway, she was like super famous columnist, and she was, well, very much involved in trying to expose who killed President Kennedy. She took her little boy, to the White House one day to meet the president, and he was so kind to her and her son. She went on to wrote an article about it, a day a little boy never will forget. Well, when the president was shot and killed, she started researching it. And she told people that I'm afraid I might be putting my life at risk. And indeed she was. And she died under very, very suspicious circumstances. I would say she was murdered. We'll see what Mark Shaw says about it. Mark, by the way, is the author of all these books right here, a lot of books. Collateral Damage, Denial of Justice. Here's the one about the Dorothy Gilgallen right there, the reporter who knew too much. We'll get into all this tonight. Who killed President John F. Kennedy? And Tulsi Gabbard, she said that they have found several boxes of documents that about over 100 people are working 24 hours a day, she said, to scan them. They've never been seen by the public and release them. We'll see what Mark Shaw thinks of that as well. It's going to be a fascinating interview with Mark Shaw. I can promise you that, all right? But first, I want to go to Leo Holman here in 1 second, because I really fear, and I have had this in my bones for a while, that the globalists are trying to set up so that America and Russia will go to war. And it's the globalists that are doing it. I want to share more about that and play a clip from a movie that I was watching the other night. I've seen this movie so many times, and I decided, okay, it's been about a year, time to see it again. I love the Tom Clancy movies, so I pulled up the movie Sum of Fears, and I was watching it. And as I was watching it, I went, holy cow. Tom Clancy, I think, was trying to warn us maybe how World War III could start. You got to see this clip. And I want Leo to see it. I don't think Leo has seen it, or at least he probably saw it years ago when all of us saw the movie. But he probably doesn't remember, because I didn't remember. And when I saw it with what's going on in the world today, I was like, was Tom Clancy trying to warn us? You've got to see this clip. We're going to go to it in just 1 second. But first, remember, folks, we are brought to you by you. Let's see here. Do I have up the, yeah, there it is. worldviewtube.com/sponsors. All of our sponsors are there. Okay, the coffee, that's the 1775 coffee that is not sprayed with toxins. It's organic. I love it. I drink it. You can get it too at worldviewcoffee.shop. Don't forget about our Worldview event coming up Tuesday night. Talk more about that later. The Wellness Company and the meds you need. Talk about that later. Worldview Talk. Get your satellite phone. Get your cell phone that doesn't track or store your data. Get your solar generator. I have the satellite phone. I'll take it with me to Milwaukee when we go, because power goes out. I want to have a satellite phone at least. I'll bring some of my battery or solar operated items as well too. I have a little go bag I travel with, so if the power grid goes down, I at least have some stuff with me. I even travel, by the way, with some freeze-dried food. I really do, because I'm like, I'm not going to get stuck. So I bring a couple months worth of freeze-dried food too. So worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com. Gold going crazy. Over $3,200 an ounce now, folks. Get on board. Get your free packet by going to worldviewgold.com. And of course, you know, I take all of these items here, the Swish, the Gatatana. That's the Swish for Life, the Numi. That's the glutathione in it to detox our cells. And then, of course, the Gatatana, which I take and drink every day. I'm sure any moment now, most will be walking through the door with my nightly drink of Gatatana. And of course, you know, Dolly gets half a scoop on her food each and every day as well. The sales on this, by the way, have spiked, and well, they should. And well, they should. This is a great product right here. You can check out all of our products and sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Okay. So I wrote this book here, The Coming Religious Reich. I wrote this book in 2016. The subtitle, Exposing the Sinister Influences Sweeping the World Toward a Satanic Global Empire, The Coming Religious Reich. And folks, you don't need to go and buy the book. If you're a Vault member, you get the entire book and all my other 15 books in your membership. So you don't need to go buy it. It's in worldviewtube.com/vault. But in this book, I lay out how the globalists are pushing us back to really many of the ideas that were found in Nazism: social justice, radical environmentalism. You have the anti-Semitism. You have the idea of dominion, taking dominion, a world empire. That's what Hitler wanted, a 1,000-year Reich. The word Reich means empire or kingdom. There's a lot of similarities between what the globalists are doing and what Hitler did. By the way, you also had Hitler took over the churches. You know that? He got the churches to dissolve their denominations and unite under the Reich bishop handpicked by Adolf Hitler. Are the globalists using religion today? Oh yeah, they're using all these religious charities to flood countries like America with illegal immigrants. Doing it with religion. The Catholic charities, Catholic bishops, Lutheran groups, so-called evangelical groups, all of them NGOs, non-government organizations, getting government money, UN money as well, to flood America with illegal immigrants to take down our country. And who did Hitler work with? He also worked with the Islamists. Remember the Grand Mufti of Palestine, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Grand Mufti of Palestine, al-Husseini? Hitler worked with him, gave him an apartment in Berlin, put him on the radio. The globalists working today with the Islamists to bring down a country, a nation, to go after the Christians and the Jews as junkyard dogs. Yeah, absolutely. Many of the Marxists, by the way, when they realized Hitler was going to win, they took off their black shirts, their Antifa shirts. No joke. Go look it up. That's been around a long time, Antifa. They took off their black uniforms and put on the brown shirts. There's a lot of similarities, folks, between what happened with Nazi Germany and what's going on today with globalism. So here's the question. Could the Nazis, the globalists, the neo-Nazis of the day, the neo-globalists, whatever you want to call them, could they be trying to get America and Russia to fight to take out these two superpowers? And then they can run the table of the world, the New World Order. Joining me to talk about this and more before I play this clip by Tom Clancy's movie is Leo Hohmann. Leo Hohmann of leohohmann.com and leohohmann.substack.com. Leo, before I go to this clip, what do you make of this opening monologue here?
Oh, it's very accurate, and it's a
up on his volume a tad, will you?
Yeah, it is a scenario, Brandon, that very few Americans are aware of, but it's very real. In fact, the top diplomat for the EU, and I would argue, by the way, that the EU was the natural progression of the Nazi fascists. The merging of Europe is something that Hitler always wanted to do. He wanted to conquer all of Europe. Well, the post-World War II fascists figured out a way to do that without firing a shot. It was called the European Common Market. And they started with economics instead of politics, and then they gradually moved it into a political union, which is today the European Union. And the top diplomat for the European Union today is a woman who is the former prime minister of Estonia. Estonia, one of the Baltic countries. Her name is Kaja Kallas. And she stated in May 2024, just less than a year ago, at a debate, a public debate, that she believed Russia should be broken up into several smaller countries. And so I got to researching, and I found out that this is not unique to Kaja Kallas, the top diplomat, head of foreign policy for the EU. The Helsinki Commission, which is a U.S. government entity, on June 23rd of 2022, actually gave a hearing before Congress. This was during the peak of the COVID lockdown, so they did it online, remotely. And you can go and watch that conference today. It's still online. And they proposed this commission, Helsinki Commission, which is a post-World War II European security conference that is headed by the United States, Britain, France, Germany. They proposed on July 23rd, 2022, in this hearing before Congress, that Russia be dealt a strategic defeat. Remember, this was already slightly after the Ukraine war had broken out, a couple months before that. And they said Russia needed to be dealt a strategic defeat and broken up into multiple countries.
Well, there you go.
This has been the plan all along, to destroy Russia as a great power, break it up into several smaller countries, and steal its resources. This has been the Nazi plan as well. Hitler planned the same thing, to dominate global resources. And by dominating the resources, you dominate the politics and the economy of the entire world.
Wow. Well, we're going to have more to say about this after this video, but I want to play it because I think you're going to be stunned. There are two scenes in the movie, and whoever put this on YouTube, because I went looking for it, combined the two clips. But the two clips don't come together like this in the movie. They're two separate scenes, but someone took the two pieces, put them together as one clip that is 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and I'm glad they did. Took me a while to find it, but I did, because persistence pays off. And
yes,
when you see this, folks, you're going to go, was Tom Clancy trying to warn us? Now, the guy you're going to see speaking right away is a Nazi, okay? And he obviously is speaking to a group of people that are sympathetic to his ideology, whether they know he's a, quote, Nazi or not, or whether they just agree with his ideology, which is, consistent with the Nazi worldview he purports to believe in. And one reason we know this is, as you watch this scene, he's speaking, and the camera pans down to his watch. And on the back of his watch that is sitting on the podium, he's taking his watch off. A lot of speakers will take their watch off when they speak so they can see the time without looking at their watch, which is kind of distracting to people listening. And he has put his watch on his podium, and the camera pans down, and you see a swastika has been etched into the underneath back part of his watch. Listen and watch. Here we go.
So what shall we make of Chechnya asking the West for protection? She is like a beautiful virgin, escaping the clutches of a lecherous bear, and running to Bill Clinton to save her maidenhood. A poet once wrote, "Meet the new boss, same as the old boss." He could have been writing of us, of Europe in the 21st century. Over 50 years of America and Russia imposing their will on the European community, East and West. And we are still treated like children, but without the toys or the goodnight chocolates. Each day we lose a little bit more of our separate, sovereign ability to determine our own futures. And each day the world comes just a little bit closer to that terrible moment when the beating of a butterfly's wings unleashes a hurricane God himself cannot stop.
All right, let me stop right there before we go to the next scene. What do you make of that?
Evil, pure evil. And one of the main, tenets of these people is it's not just they don't have a belief in God. It's not just atheists. They hate God. And their entire agenda is built around trying to one-up God, trying to mock God, trying to become more powerful than God, trying to undo and stop the prophecies of God from coming true. That's why they hate Jews and want to wipe them out. That's the spiritual dynamic of it, which he touched on right there in that last sentence of the video.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the next scene, which is really going to tie it all together. Here we go.
Most people believe the 20th century was defined by the death struggle of communism versus capitalism, and that fascism was but a hiccup. Today we know better. Communism was a fool's errand. The followers of Marx gone from this earth, but the followers of Hitler are bound and thrive. Hitler, however, had one great disadvantage. He lived in a time when fascism, like a virus, like the AIDS virus, needed a strong host in order to spread. Germany was that host, but strong as it was, Germany could not prevail. The world was too big. Fortunately, the world has changed. Global communications, cable TV, the internet. Today the world is smaller. And the virus does not need a strong host in order to spread. This virus is airborne. One more thing. Let no man call us crazy. They called Hitler crazy, but Hitler wasn't crazy. He was stupid. You don't fight Russia and America. You get Russia and America to fight each other. And destroy each other.
And that scene right there is they're bringing in a vending machine with a nuclear weapon in it. It was in Tom Clancy's movie. This was in Baltimore, Maryland. And these Nazis had acquired the material. You can watch the movie to find out. They had acquired the material in order to have brought into the country and assembled. They had assembled and then shipped into the country the vending machine, which had already been pre-built, and it was shipped into the country and then put into place. And you can watch the movie to find out how they acquired this nuclear weapon. But notice what he said. What you do is you get America and Russia to fight each other. And that's really what we're seeing going on, is it not?
Yes, Brandon, I've actually never even seen that movie.
Oh, you've not seen it? Well, you should watch it tonight.
No. And yet, that is what I've been saying, isn't it, for months?
Yep.
If I were the globalist, the most efficient, cost-effective way to get my way and instill global government, because in order to instill and implement global government, you've got to destroy nations. And in order to destroy nations, you've got to destroy the most powerful nations. And right now, that starts with the United States of America and Russia. China is pretty much all on board with it. But there's a powerful segment of population in America and in Russia that the globalists know there is no way they would go along with surrendering their sovereignty and pledging fealty to some sort of outside global entity. So they've got to take those two countries down, and then all the dominoes will fall. All the currencies will fall. The nations will be lined up for some new system to protect their interests and stop their economies from going into complete poverty. And that all starts with the United States and Russia going to war, Brandon. I've been saying this for months now, and it's interesting that Tom Clancy saw it years ago.
Well, he sure did. He sure did. And tonight on the Worldview Report, we had the report. Leo's our senior producer for that report. The German chancellor, the man said to be Germany's new chancellor, just signed an agreement, or reached an agreement with Germany's parliament to dispatch 5,000 German troops to the Lithuanian border as NATO deployment. It's a NATO deployment. I mean, so clearly, again, here we are. These Europeans, these globalists in Europe are pushing us to World War III. They want to see World War III, doing it under NATO, because then Article 5 kicks in and America's got to come and get involved with a war to protect our allies through our agreements through NATO. Thus, we find ourselves in a war with Russia. Now, the greater concern has been, and you and I have been saying it for months and months and months, has been a false flag event that gets blamed on Russia. That's what the sum of all fears is about. These Nazis bring this nuclear weapon into the U.S. disguised as a vending machine and let a nuclear weapon off in Baltimore, Maryland. The president just barely escapes being in the football stadium with the CIA director, Morgan Freeman, played by Morgan Freeman. And the young Jack Ryan, the lead character in Clancy's movies, is trying to convince the president, who just about died, that this was not Russia, that this is a setup. And he's trying to get the American president and the Russian president to talk to each other and to come for the U.S. president not to do a retaliatory strike. And again, folks should rewatch the movie, because you and I have been warning for months about a false flag operation in America. And we have said, if there is an explosion, a terrorist attack, a massive attack in America, we should very quickly question who was behind it. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I think we now have the globalists, some of these globalists in our own CIA. I think we have some of these globalists that have penetrated inside our own government, which of course is why these globalists did not want Donald Trump being president the first time or the second time. So if they're willing to let a president, former president and presidential candidate almost get assassinated, you know, what else would they do, right? Well, look what they did with us to us through COVID, and all these other things have been doing to us for decades and decades, right? So we know that these people in this federal government, many of them, they're not loyal to America. And you and I know that through Operation Paperclip, a bunch of the Nazis were brought here to America, and they were put into our government from NASA. I think even the Republican Party took a bunch of them into their employment. And our CIA knew we had Nazis hiding out in America. They used them. They controlled them. Our CIA was involved in this. I think Edwin Black is written on this as well.
Yeah. Yep, Alan Dulles was involved in it, one of the early forefathers of the CIA. Brannon, he was 100% involved in this, in bringing over thousands of Nazis, put them into our military hierarchy, put them into NASA, put them into large corporate boardrooms. Absolutely, Brannon. And it continues to this day. It continues to this day. And that's why we're seeing this escalation, a little bit more every week, a little bit more every month. Now we see German troops being pushed to the border of Russia in Lithuania, of all places. You know, they're talking about bringing French and British troops, the coalition of the willing, they call it, and putting them into Ukraine and stacking Ukraine with Western NATO troops now that we've burned through most of the Ukrainian troops. So their end game is to attack Russia through, more than likely through Ukraine. And so that's why they've been expanding and enlarging NATO over the years. It started out with 12 or 13 countries. It's now up to 32 countries. Finland and Sweden are the newest members. They wanted to bring Ukraine in. This would have fully encircled Russia's western border. And so Putin, if he wants to stay in power, cannot accept this. People say Putin's a dictator, Putin's a tyrant. Well, that may be the case, but he's also trying to protect the sovereignty of Russia. And that is a very popular thing in Russia. Imagine that. Imagine Russians wanting to protect their border, just like Americans want us to protect our border. What would we do if we had Russian or Chinese troops in Mexico firing missiles into Texas? I think we would take a little umbrage at that. And so the refusal of so many people to look at the Russia-Ukraine situation through the eyes of history and the Nazification of Ukraine, some of the most it's no accident that the West used Ukraine as its proxy to fight Russia, because there are more Nazis today anywhere in Europe. They're mostly in Ukraine. The Azov Battalion is a Nazi battalion in the Ukrainian military. It is some of the most fierce fighters in the Ukrainian military force. And this is what Putin fears. And this is why Putin invaded and has been trying over the last 3 years to degrade those Nazi forces. He's largely accomplished his goal. And now the West, seeing that it has burned through most of those Nazi forces, is talking about bringing its own forces in. And I expect that to happen probably sometime in 2025 or 2026.
Here's from my book, The Coming Religious Reich. Eric Lichtblau wrote the book, The Nazis Next Door. The Nazis Next Door. And in October 26, 2014, an article in the New York Times, he revealed the following. This is just bullet points. In the decades after World War II, the CIA and other United States agencies employed at least 1,000 Nazis as Cold War spies and informants, and recently as the 1990s, concealed the government's ties to some still living in America. Newly disclosed records and interviews show. They believe the ex-Nazis' intelligence value against the Russians outweighed what one official called moral lapses in their service to the Third Reich. Really, moral lapses, extermination of 6 million Jews, 5 million non-Jews. Huh. In 1994, a lawyer with the CIA pressured prosecutors to drop an investigation into an ex-spy outside Boston implicated in the Nazi massacre of tens of thousands of Jews in Lithuania, according to a government official. Some spies in the United States had worked...
Isn't that interesting? Lithuania.
Yep.
And that's now where the Germans are stationing troops.
Yep. Some spies for the United States had worked at the highest levels of the Nazis. One SS officer, Otto von Blauschwing, was a member and top aide to Adolf Eichmann, architect of the final solution, and wrote policy papers on how to terrorize Jews. Yet after the war, the CIA not only hired him as a spy in Europe, but relocated him and his family to New York City in 1954, records show. The move was seen as a, quote, reward for his loyal post-war service and in view of his what is that word? Innocence?
Innocuousness.
Thank you. Innocuousness of his Nazi party activities, end quote, the agency wrote. When Justice Department was preparing in 1994 to prosecute a senior Nazi collaborator in Boston, there's his name, Alexandros Lilikis, the CIA tried to intervene. The agency's own files linked Mr. Lilikis to the machine gun massacre of 60,000 Jews. Where? In Lithuania.
Yeah.
He worked under the control of the Gestapo during the war, his CIA file noted, and was possibly connected with the shooting of Jews in Vilna. And there's a lot more, folks. I am just scratching the surface. Not to mention we had IBM heavily involved, and you should read Edwin Black's book, Nazi Holocaust, IBM and the Nazi Holocaust. The point I'm making is the Nazis infiltrated our government. People thought what the Nazis did was just a moral lapse, really. I think some of them agreed with their ideology. Don't forget, we had anti-Semitism running rampant in America prior to World War II. There was a particular Catholic priest, Father, it'll come to me, he was on the radio preaching his anti-Semitism, Father Coughlin. He was preaching his anti-Semitism on nationwide radio. This dude was like the Billy Graham, if you will, of radio. And he was preaching this anti-Semitism, Father Coughlin. And this anti-Semitism was permeating America. I think it was the USS St. Louis that our own government refused to let land here in America with Jews on it, fleeing World War II and the Holocaust, only to be sent back to Europe where most of them died. I think I write about that. USS St. Louis. I think I write about that in this book as well. But yeah, it's. I think we had a lot of people in our government that were very sympathetic to the worldview of the Nazis, in part because of the connection. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. This is on page 459 of The Coming Religious Reich. I had to do the old Control F to find it. In June 1939, America refused to allow the SS St. Louis to land in America and give refuge and safe harbor to Semitic passengers. In Refugee Denied, the St. Louis Passengers in the Holocaust, Sarah A. Ogilvie and Scott Miller reveal the fate of the fate of those America refused to embrace and protect. Quote, I'm having a hard time reading tonight. Quote, of the 620 St. Louis passengers, again, that's the name of the ship, who returned to continental Europe, we determined that 87 were able to immigrate before Germany invaded Western Europe on May 10th, 1940. 254 passengers in Belgium, France, and the Netherlands after that date died during the Holocaust. Most of these people were murdered in the killing centers of Auschwitz and Sobibor. The rest died in internment camps, in hiding or attempting to evade the Nazis. 365 of the 620 passengers who returned to continental Europe survived the war, end quote. And well, of course, again, that was because anti-Semitism with Father Coughlin all over the radio was greatly influencing our elected officials as well. So what I'm saying is America has had these people in our government, in religious systems for a long time. And now, of course, many of these globalists in our government are trying to do their part to get America to go to war. So it's not just the globalist in America, it's the globalist all over this world and in Europe, at the UN and NATO, these globalists, these neo-Nazis that want America and Russia to fight so they can get rid of these two strong empires and then roll into the New World Order. You cannot have the New World Order if you have the sovereignty of individual nations. We had this told to us by Bill Clinton's own roommate. Bill Clinton's own roommate, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to come up with it now, but Bill Clinton's own roommate, who went on to go to the State Department, Assistant Secretary of State. What was his name? His college roommate that went on, Strobe Talbert was his name. The hard drive will catch up in a minute. Strobe Talbert went on to talk about we can't have individual nation states, they must give way. You cannot have a nationalistic fervor in America or in Russia. We've got to get rid of these two nations. And I think the globalists / new Nazis of the day want these two empires to fight. And that's, I think, what Tom Clancy, God rest his soul, was trying to warn us.
Yes. And, you know, they hide under this premise of democracy. They always talk about they're defending democracy.
Right.
What they're really defending is a fascist system of government that they're trying to bring in over time. And there's also a fascist element to the whole technocracy movement that Patrick Wood talks about. You know, you could make the case that the very first technocrats to actually implement that system on a group of people were the Nazis in Germany. You know, they used the IBM punch cards and the highest technology of the day to spy on people, to keep tabs on people, to, kill their, and another very big premise of this fascist dictatorship system that they want to implement is the curtailment of freedom of speech. I mean, look at the treatment of people who spoke the truth about COVID and the COVID vaccine. You know, Rainer Fuhlmisch was a German attorney. He's sitting in a German prison to this day because he dared to speak the truth about COVID, lockdowns, and vaccines. The so-called democracy of Germany has a law-abiding, patriotic, Christian man locked up in prison for speaking the truth. We've seen the same thing going on in the UK, where you can now be locked up for posting a meme on Facebook. I kid you not. We've seen how And a lot of these new fascist and technocratic fascists, by the way, are Jewish. Look at Mark Zuckerberg, head of Facebook. Information has come out, godless Jews I'm talking about, not actual.
Right. Like the governor of Pennsylvania,
yes.
Shapiro, who just gave $5 million to what I think is a terrorist-tied linked mosque.
Yes. And Zuckerberg's Facebook, it just came out yesterday, was colluding with the government of China, the Chinese Communist Party, to use censorship tools on Facebook to keep those people in line with government dictates. And so these people have no conscience. They may call themselves Americans, but they have no allegiance to America. People like Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, George Soros. Some are Jewish, some are Gentile. There's no there's no pattern of them all being Jewish like some of the conspiracy conservatives tend to try to convince us. We have both just as evil. That the common denominator is power and money, not religion or race, but power over people and money. That's always been the Nazi modus operandi, and it still is today.
Oh, well said. And then look at this headline today. Congressmen tell Glenn Beck they're being monitored and threatened by the CIA. He said he's had several conversations with members of Congress who have told him to make sure you leave your phone outside. You don't have your iWatch on, do you? Get rid of all this stuff and let's go for a walk. And then they'll say outside as we're walking quietly, the CIA is monitoring everything that we're doing in Congress. They're monitoring all of us.
Well, do you recall, Brandon, under Barack Obama, the CIA, the government, was monitoring, they had bugs monitoring the Associated Press news offices.
Yep. Remember this? Remember the NSA director? The NSA director went to Trump Tower after he was president-elect and told Trump, get out of there, you're being monitored.
Yes. So this is the curtailment of free speech, freedom of expression, the free press, the media. None of that exists under Nazism. And so that's why you see the growing Nazi states of Europe and America before Donald Trump took over and stopped a lot of this. Under Biden, we were heading the exact same way. Under Barack Obama, we were heading that way. They absolutely hate the truth. And so how do you combat the truth? Remember Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda officer, Joseph Goebbels, he said if you tell a big enough lie and tell it often enough, people will believe it. Mm-hmm. And they know that they cannot propagandize the masses and make them believe their lies as long as we have a free press and a First Amendment free speech. That's why they're so militant in attacking those two things.
Yep. And LifeSite News says the CIA has a long history of controversy for engaging in unconstitutional, illegal, and evil activities. Most grievous is its documented use of torture, such as in Project MK-Ultra, the human control program, and the training of groups that have killed civilians and helped overthrow democratically elected governments, end quote. Well, that's what's going on now. And you wonder then why the CIA is monitoring some members of Congress. Because some of them, they know what's going on. They're not for this globalism. They don't want to go to World War III. They're not playing along.
The biggest lie, remember Goebbels said, don't tell a small lie, tell a big lie. Tell a big lie and repeat it continuously. And what is the biggest lie we're being told today? That we live in a democracy, and that the Western European countries are democracies, and we must defend these democracies. The heck we do. These aren't democracies. These are totalitarian systems, soft communism in a way, but really fascism, big government working with big business to curtail and crack down on free speech and to make us less and less free. We are no longer a free people when our income is, a quarter of our income is spoken for every year and stolen by the government and then used to go fund, condoms for Gaza and LGBTQ comic books in Peru. That is not freedom, folks. And so do not believe the lie that we are a free people living in a democracy. That is nothing but the big Nazi lie that they repeat endlessly. And when they say they're defending it, think of it this way. They're defending their Nazi interests. That's what they're calling democracy.
Yep, 100%. And of course, what you're describing, that big government, big business merging, is corporate fascism, also known as communitarianism, the third way. You know, you take the one idea and another idea and you merge them for a third option, which is this fascist system. And that's what Hitler was doing. The National Socialist Workers' Party was a fascist system. And so nothing's really new under the sun. And we're headed back to another Reich. And they've got to stop those who are warning about these things and trying to stop us from going to World War III. They've got to control these people. They've got to intimidate these people. They've got to threaten these people. And frankly, I don't think you would ever see a program like this on, say, Fox News, because I think Fox News, in my opinion, is part of this. I think they are heavily involved with the fascist government system, the CIA, the deep state. I mean, why Sean Hannity for years wasn't that a CIA pin he wore on his shirt for years? I mean, Fox News, tell me they're not controlled opposition or willingly going along with this system. Most outlets would never do a segment like we just did tonight because A, they don't understand it, and B, they're not about to expose it. This is the system they're all playing in, and we're not playing in that system.
That's why you never saw Fox News. While they report a lot of stuff from a conservative position, you never heard them tell the truth about the vaccines. You never heard them tell the truth about the election steal and the whole election integrity issue with voting machines being tampered with. All that's coming out now. Isn't that interesting? Tulsi Gabbard just come out yesterday at that cabinet meeting and exposed the whole thing. She said our system is compromised. It's able to be manipulated remotely. What did they tell us? A big lie for years. Oh, these voting machines they have no access to online activity. They're not connected to the internet. Wrong. We knew it was wrong the whole time. They were lying to us. Brandon, it's time for people to wake up and realize that their government and the mainstream media, they specialize in telling big lies and repeating them constantly.
And amen. And this is why the globalists want to use the courts, like the International Criminal Court, to put indictments against Benjamin Netanyahu, put indictments against Putin, put indictments against President Trump. Any leader that doesn't go along with their globalist ideas, they're going to use the international organizations to try to bring them down. And that's when they're not stopping like the Viktor Orban in Hungary, or the new leader rising in Romania? Is that the one they've tried to stop him, arrested him? So you see this is all going on, but most Americans and people around the world do not connect the dots like we have just done. Why are they going after strong nationalist leaders? Netanyahu has his problems, but he's trying to protect his country. Donald Trump's not perfect, but he's trying to protect his country. Putin, I don't agree with a lot of what he's doing as far as, some of his worldview inside his country, but he's trying to protect his Russian culture and history and heritage. He's doing what he believes is best for his nation. Viktor Orban, the guy in Romania who's rising as a Trump-style Romania First candidate. Notice who they all go after, the type of leaders they go after, right?
Yes, exactly. Georgescu in Romania is a prime example. Robert Fico, I believe, is his name in, what was it? One of the other Eastern European countries escapes me right now. He's another one. And so, yeah, they go after these type of strong nationalist leaders, populist leaders. People, Putin is wildly popular in Russia. People call him a dictator. Maybe he is, but Russia has a history of being led by dictators. Some good, some benevolent, I should say. No dictator's really good, but some are more benevolent than others. They have their nation's more interests more at heart than others, whereas some are just trying to, milk the system and get rich and empower and enrich their friends and family. But Russia has no history of a constitutional republic, okay? And that's their choice. That's the will of their people. And so why is it up to the West to define and decide what type of government and what type of leader they will have in Russia? It's not. But that's why they want to break the country up, because it's too powerful as it is. It has too many resources to compete with the West. It doesn't foment the Green New Deal climate change agenda when you've got cheap gas and oil flowing out of a strong Russian state that blows up the entire climate change Green New Deal model that they want to bring into place with the carbon credit taxes and all of that. And so Putin's got to go, and Russia needs to be broken up into a host of smaller countries. That's the agenda. That's the game plan. We're living in the midst of that playing out right now. It remains to be seen whether the globalists will succeed with this or not, Brandon, but you can't say they're not trying. My goodness, they are trying, and the way to bring it all about is through World War III. Entire maps tend to get rewritten after major wars. Look what happened after World War II. They rewrote the maps. They have the same plan for World War III, and on the ashes of that war, they will redraw the maps and have a whole new international economic system in place.
Yep, 100%. And I think Tom Clancy tried to warn us, and there's the line. The Nazi says, the fascist says, you get Russia and America to fight each other. There you go. I wonder if Tom Clancy was trying to warn us, Leo.
I've got to watch that movie, Brandon.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I don't think I saw the significance of it when it came out, but now, wow.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me know what you think. And great segment. LeoHolman.com, LeoHolman.com, and LeoHolman.substack.com.
And I have a fresh article about everything we've been talking about at my Substack right now.
Well, let me go there. Let me go there real quick. Let me go there. LeoHolman.substack.com. There it is. There it is. In the latest escalation, German troops moved to Russian border Lithuania, first time post-World War II. It's looking more and more inevitable that World War III is on the near horizon.
It is.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, Leo, there are very few Americans preparing for World War III. But my family's been preparing. You've been preparing. You and I talk often. You and I are both always updating our prepper plans, updating stuff, because you and I know that likely this will happen when we least expect it. You're going to wake up one morning, something's going to have happened, and you're going to go, oh my, we're in the thick of it now. And there will be very little time for most people to prepare.
Absolutely spot on, Brandon. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Leo. LeoHolman.substack.com, LeoHolman.substack.com. And folks, if you do want to prepare, go over to Worldview Store, worldviewstore.com. We have a lot of stuff there for you. Freeze-dried food, 3 months, 6 month, a year, 2 year. We have potassium iodide. We have all kinds of emergency supplies, as well as the food, as I said, and then the supplies as well. Sutures, gas masks, 100-hour candles, water containers that are collapsible, the EMT medical trauma bags, ready-hour blood clot powder, all kinds of stuff is there. Because again, we're living in very, very perilous times, and sadly, most Americans are not aware of this at all. Well, as you saw when I was beginning that interview with Leo, Melissa brought me my nightly Gatatana. And so again, folks, you see I drink it every night. I do it on air because I want you to realize I really do take this each and every day. Dolly gets half a scoop on her food every morning. I don't give it to her at night because I need her to settle down and go to sleep at night. I'm going to set this off to the side and work on that throughout the night here as we keep interviewing people. But I do hope you'll go to melissahousegpa.com, melissahousegpa.com. Get a subscription. This is got science behind it. It's the real deal. I take my Gataton every day, my Bella Grace. I swish with my Numi. Folks, get a subscription. I'll probably plug this again before the evening is over, but I want you to take this very, very seriously. It's a great way for you to support us. Joining me now is Mark Shaw. He's an expert on all things RFK, JFK, and the assassinations. And this week, yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard said that they have found many boxes with JFK and apparently RFK files in them that have never been seen by the public. She said she has about 100 people working 24 hours a day to scan them in and release them to the public in the next few days. I don't know. Do you really believe she has people working 100 people working 24 hours a day to do this? I don't know. We'll see. Well, what does Mr. Mark Shaw think about the current dump of JFK files over the last few weeks? And where does he think all of this is going? And a lot of things you probably don't know about the JFK assassination, including Dorothy Killigan. Let's get into her a little bit tonight as well. He joins us now. His website is markshawbooks.com, markshawbooks.com. I have all that right, Mark?
You do. Kilgallen, by the way, I mispronounce it at times. It's just Kilgallen.
Kilgallen, just like kill and
right.
a gallon of milk. Kilgallen. All right,
Yep,
well, let's start with her. Who is she?
Well, it's interesting, Branton. I'm a historian, former criminal defense lawyer, but turned historian and the author of a bunch of books, 30-some by now, the last 6 being focused on the JFK assassination. And I was privileged, starting with the 4th book, to learn about Dorothy Kilgallen. Now, many of your listeners, if they're up in the age group where I am, I just turned 80, will
I would
remember
not.
Dorothy.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I don't know what you're taking, but I would have never guessed you were 80.
Well,
wow.
That's very nice of you, and I appreciate that, but I'm a very blessed man. I've lived longer than I ever thought possible. When I grew up, 50 was old.
I know. I feel
And,
it now at 56 in a couple weeks, but 80, you don't look 80, my friend.
Absolutely. We were with a woman the other day that's 102, and she said she couldn't stay too long at lunch because she had to drive up to Lake Tahoe from San Francisco. So there you go.
102.
Anyway.
By the way,
This
can you
is
show his website? My computer button's not working, Caleb. I just pushed computer and it didn't work. But I'd like to show his website real quick and all of his books. There they all
That's
are.
me right there, and there's the books.
markshawbooks.com. All right, I'm sorry. Keep going.
That's okay. So anyway, I was very fortunate. I'm a person as a criminal defense lawyer, former criminal defense lawyer. I look at motive. And when I began to look into the JFK assassination, I came across this woman named Dorothy Kilgallen. Now, for people who are up in age like me, they will most remember her for being a panelist on a show called What's My Line, which was on CBS every Sunday night live from New York at 10 o'clock. More than 10 million people watch that show every week. And Dorothy was they would call her kind of the prosecutor on the group, on the panel, because she would look into the oddball occupations by a lot of those people that came on there. But most of all, she got her reputation as a trusted, revered, heralded journalist for the New York Journal-American, which was a big-time newspaper in the 1950s and 60s. And she covered then a lot of the main trials at the time. You'll remember the Dr. Sam Shepard case, for instance, which became The Fugitive film. And she actually was able to assist with Dr. Shepard getting a reprieve from a life sentence by some evidence she uncovered.
And I think we're about to show her, by the way, on here, the screen.
Okay, yeah, you can show her there. She is right there. You betcha. Excellent work. And she also covered the Charles Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, Lenny Bruce's case, a lot of those cases, and she got her reputation based on all of that. But to just get right to the point, one of her best friends, and I suppose a lot of people would say this, one of her best friends, that's Arlene Francis, was one of the other panelists, but Dorothy's over there at the left-hand side. So anyway, she was a very close friend of John F. Kennedy's. She had met him at some of the watering holes when he was a senator in Manhattan. And then he was at her home for several parties that went on. Jackie was there and so on and so forth. And this is most important, really, because they were friends to the extent that the president invited Dorothy and her son, who was in the 3rd grade, to the White House. And while they were there, he made a big fuss over the little boy's letters he'd brought from his 3rd grade class, gave him a PT 109 pin, and so on and so forth. So when Dorothy found out that JFK had died, she wrote one of the first columns, and we'll talk about some of her columns. And that was, what I remember is a tall man stooping over a little boy, praising him for the letters he brought from his 3rd grade class. This is the man who was assassinated in Dallas. And so what did Dorothy do? Well, she got permission from her newspaper, and she took off, and she went to Dallas, Texas. Now, here's where I differ, and all of the other people who say there are experts about the JFK assassination. None of us were there at all. But Dorothy Kilgallen was there. And we know because we have footage on NBC of her being in Daley Plaza. She interviewed Jesse Curry, the Dallas police chief. And then she was at the Jack Ruby trial. For people who don't remember, Jack Ruby is the one who shot and killed Lee Harvey Oswald, who was suspected, and we'll talk about the new records, what it says about those, suspected of killing Lee Harvey Oswald, Ruby was. So she went to the Jack Ruby trial. She sat in the first row. She and Ruby made eye contact. And yeah, household name, that's right. Tenacious reporting and so on and so forth. She was the real deal. So anyway, she was at the Ruby trial, right at in the front row, and she and Ruby met, and then she was the only reporter to have interviewed Brannon, Jack Ruby, out of 400 reporters there. And she went on then to investigate the JFK assassination, and unfortunately then she got too close to the truth, and we can talk about her death in 1965. But Dorothy is, in my opinion, and I was fortunate to use a lot of her research and then put that forward with what I was able to find in the books, because she is the most credible reporter to have ever covered the assassination.
Well, you know, I've read parts of her story, and it's quite chilling. Now, you say that she was in Daley Plaza the day that President Kennedy was shot?
No, but within 3 or 4 days of when he was shot. And the thing that is interesting there, because it will connect with the new records and the testimony at the hearing that the task force has on the assassinations. She interviewed Jess Curry. There I go.
There was Mark right there on the screen, by the way, guys. You just saw that.
There you go. And then that was Dorothy with Melvin Belli, who was Dorothy Jack Ruby's attorney. But she found out from Curry, this is the police chief, when he heard the shots, where did he look? He looked at the overpass and the grassy knoll. He never looked at the book depository where Oswald supposedly shot the president. And if you want to use that as a segue to get into what these new records and what the testimony shows at the first hearing, this might be a good point to do that.
Let's do that, absolutely.
So they had this
so you
hearing.
are saying there was some good stuff, Mark, that came out of the recent dump?
Yeah, the biggest problem, though, is a little bit what you were saying about Gabbard, if that's her, if I pronounce her name right.
Kelsey Gabbard.
She says she's finding boxes of records. And in fact, I think it was well-intentioned when these records were released. The president was very excited about it and everything. But frankly, I think most people would agree it was pretty much a disaster. They hurried it too much. So not only did they leave out about 2,400 FBI documents that were never given to the archives, which need to be released, but also they forgot to redact some of the phone numbers of people that lived in the 60s. They forgot to redact Social Security numbers.
Oh, wow.
We were promised that these new records would not have any black marks across the testimony or the evidence, and they were there. But I hope that Gabbard and others now will start to release the rest of the documents. But here's the rub of what happened. At the task force hearing, and I had a conversation with Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, who is the chairwoman there, the day before that hearing. And I talked to her about my evidence and what I was able to show through Dorothy Kilgallen, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But I told her what that was all about, and I said in a letter to her, I would like to offer my research to your task force because I think it will give you another alternative in terms of all this CIA and Oswald alone material. And she said, yes, Mark, that sounds good, and when we have a new hearing, we'll get in touch with you. So I appreciated that. So what did they find? Well, they found out several things, and people should go to YouTube because they can watch a lot of parts of that hearing. One of the experts was Jefferson Morley, who's an author and has a podcast and so on and so forth. And he basically broke it down. And this is what should shock you and certainly shock me, although this is exactly what Dorothy Kilgallen believed from the first column she wrote. The Oswald file must not close. She did not believe Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, and that's what Morley said that shocked everybody that was listening and watching the hearing, he said Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot John F. Kennedy. Then he went ahead and said, all right, now here's some of the things that we know. By the way, there she is. I'm very impressed with her, by the way. She handled that hearing very well, and she was very cordial to me when we were on the telephone. So bless her for doing what she's doing. There's Mr. Morley. So here's what he said. Basically, in long and short, well, based on all the documents, some of which he's holding, Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot the President of the United States. Then she went on to find out, to release some of the things that Dorothy had worked on when she was in Dallas. One of them, that was Lee Harvey Oswald, was never in the book depository. Now, just think about that a minute. And how they did it is they had the testimonies of witnesses, 3 women, 2 of who I believe were on the 4th floor and 1 was on the 2nd floor. And so when the shots rang out, they decided to go downstairs on the steps and see what was going on. Well, they've always said that Jack Ruby Lee Harvey Oswald escaped from the book depository by going down those stairs. Well, the 3 women say they never saw him. And Morley pointed out that for him to get down there before they would have gotten to the point where they wanted to watch what was going on, he would have had to be a track star. So you see, there's a lot of common sense things here, and I look at that when I look at Common Sense Moby. What else did they do? They said that, there's no question that there were inconsistencies between the bullets that were supposedly found in Oswald's rifle, and more than that, that the rifle did not match what he was found to have supposedly had in the book depository. That was all more fiction than fact, is what we find out more, which is very disturbing. But the most telling one is that Morley pointed out that there were doctors at Parkland Hospital when JFK's body was brought to the hospital who examined the wounds that he had as they were trying to save his life. Well, what they found was what they call a hole wound, and that wound went in through the front of JFK's mouth, all the way through out the back there somewhere. And that was really important because it showed that if Oswald shot him from the back, that was impossible based on the wounds. So these are things that we learned in there, and I was really excited about them, as I told Congresswoman Luna, because those are exactly the kinds of evidence that Dorothy Kilgallen had discovered through her investigation, and confirmed really what she had found out when she was in Dallas.
Now, are you saying that one of the shots went into the president's mouth and came out the back?
That's what Morley says. People should go look at exactly what his account is. So if I'm JFK in the limousine here, okay, and up there is the overpass and the grassy knolls right over there. If the shots come from the back, they would have come through here, and that whole magic bullet ball was crazy about it going through his body and Connolly and his body and everything.
Senator Arlen Specter came up with that, didn't he? Arlen Specter.
Yeah, boy. Anyway, we could talk about him for hours.
Mm-hmm.
But and these people were well-intentioned, I think. They just didn't do their research. I'll tell you what happened, and then we'll talk about these shots. J. Edgar Hoover, when he first heard of Robert Kennedy's death, and he called, JFK's death, and he called Robert Kennedy and told him that the president was dead. The first thing Robert Kennedy said, well, it's the guy from New Orleans, which was this mafioso Carlos Marcello that we should talk about, because that is who Dorothy nailed as the one who orchestrated the death. But what did Hoover do? He shouted to the world, Oswald alone, Oswald alone, Oswald alone. Well, why did he do that? He did that because he was protecting his ass, pardon my language, because if it's a lone nut that shoots the President of the United States, the FBI cannot be responsible. But if there's I don't like to use the C word, so I say plot to kill the president, then the FBI could be responsible. What's the second thing he did? He had his agents go to Parkland Hospital and basically steal JFK's body, the autopsy should have been done there, and sent to a military base in Washington, D.C., where inexperienced people, forensic people, handle the autopsy. Cyril Weck, who would be a great guest for you if he was still alive, the best forensic scientist we've ever seen in this country, told me in an interview he had conducted 60,000 autopsies, and the worst one he ever saw was the one conducted on JFK, because what did Hoover do? He set it up so it looked like the JFK had been shot from the back. So if those shots came from the grassy knoll or the overpass, then everything changes, as you can imagine. And I just want to mention one other thing that happened here, because we do want to talk in depth about the Warren Commission and how they botched everything and they basically just rubber stamped what Hoover did. But I was able to find out, and I think you'll be interested, the mainstream media, by the way, was at fault for a great deal of this. They just bought Hoover's account, Oswald alone. They even bought the fact that Oswald shot the policeman Tippit shortly after shooting the president, and Dorothy Kilgallen proved that that wasn't true. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. But basically, Hoover had gone ahead and did this all to cover up exactly what happened. And a part of that, of course, is that there had to be, for the Oswald alone theory to work, that there's only one shooter. But I was able to find a witness, and unfortunately the mainstream media missed all this. He worked for a dealership in Dallas, a car dealership, and he went down to watch the motorcade, and he was watching, and then he heard the shots. He says shots, not shot. And he looked down, and a part of the curb in front of him had a hole in it, and the curb part had come off, and the bullet he heard hit the cement there. More than that, he then said he checked his cheek, and he had blood on his finger. So those shots had to have come from the front, couldn't have come from the back where he was standing. So there's another indication. His name is James Tagg. They can read about it in my most recent book, Fighting for Justice, or the new one that will be coming out in the fall called Abuse of Power. And basically, those accounts, and especially what Curry said, and especially what the women at the depository said, completely obliterate, as Jefferson Morley said, any possibility that Lee Harvey Oswald either shot the president or acted alone, of course.
I want to bring up a story here real quick, and that is Robert Knudsen. Robert Knudsen was a White House photographer. There's an article on him. And he worked on the White House photography staff for 5 administrations: Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. And he took some of the first photographs of John F. Kennedy's son, John Jr., walking in the Oval Office at the age of 18 months in May of '62, says this article. And I know the author that wrote this article, but I've interviewed him. And what's very interesting, Mark, is that I had the opportunity to visit in person, face to face, with Robert Knudsen's son.
I want to write this down.
And his son told me to my face that his dad would take him to the White House sometimes on the weekends.
Oh, wow.
And he was a little boy growing up with all this going on. And he said that his father had been a naval officer, and to be on a boat, the president had to have a current or former naval officer with him. So he said, because my father had been in the Navy and was a White House photographer, he could fulfill both those roles, which would mean the crowd could be smaller, entourage traveling with the president.
Oh, yeah.
So he said, a lot of the pictures you see of President Kennedy on the water or in a boat, my dad took those. Now, anyone that types in Robert Knudsen, Knudsen, photographs, will see that he took a lot of photographs. Even I think he took some photographs of the home that Jackie bought in Virginia that I think was going to be their home after he got out of the White House. And she was already and he took a lot of those photographs. I found them online a couple of years ago. She was already starting to set up a home for them post-presidency. But he told me to my face that his father was called in, and he details some of this You can go look his name, you can look him up, and Robert is giving some testimony. I think his mother also did too as well at one time, that he was called away. He was called away at night, and he left, and he didn't come back for quite some time, his father. And he's told me that his father was summoned to the, it was the military hospital there, where they brought the president's body, which would have been, what hospital was that again? Where
I've forgotten the name, but yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. It's a military hospital.
Military hospital, yeah.
Autopsy.
Yeah.
Walter Reed, was it?
I don't think so. I think this was...
I'll look
anyway.
it up. I'll look it up while you talk. So they summoned him there, and he told me my father walked in, saw the president's body, and took lots of photographs. And he said, my father told me that he saw steel rods going through the president's brain, going 2 different directions. Which he said means you got bullets coming from 2 different directions.
Nice.
And he said that my father took the out film, put it in those little black cases, handed it to men in the room who said, we want that. He said they were wearing dark suits, and he says my father did not know if they were FBI, Secret Service, who they were. He handed them those. He said those photographs have never been seen. He told me his father had been called to testify before the Warren Commission. He said his testimony is not in the Warren Commission. And he said that my father went in for surgery and didn't come back out alive. The word on this here is, in his obituary, was that he, I guess, died of a heart attack or something heart-related. Of course, we know how those things can go, right? But he told me his dad went in and did not come out alive. Now, I'm just telling you his story as he told me directly to my face, standing in Northern Virginia at a mutual friend's home.
I'll look into that. I had not heard that name before, but I'm not surprised, okay? You have to remember, J. Edgar Hoover, I think, may be one of the worst people who ever lived, but he was very, very smart. And he was not about to let any other investigation. Well, let's just talk about that. The state of Texas, the Attorney General, wanted to do an investigation of JFK's death. That's where it should have taken place. Congress also had several members who wanted the Congress to do the investigation. And boy, when J. Edgar Hoover and Lyndon Baines Johnson found out about that, and people will be most interested in this, in my latest book, Fighting for Justice, and you can find these on the internet too, are audio tape accounts of LBJ and Hoover talking about they finally want to get the Warren Commission done so all these other investigations won't take place. And then they go through who they want on the commission. And basically they're looking for people who will what? Rubber stamp the Oswald alone theory. And in effect, we know that, who was, for instance, Alan Dulles was on there, who the president had, JFK had fired a year or so earlier because of the botching of the Bay of Pigs situation. Jerry Ford, they talk about him being dumb enough because he can't chew gum and think this at the same time. They talk about all that. But what's most interesting in there to me was finding this, and I think this goes along with some of the things as to what happened to Mr. Knudsen. Anybody or anything that conflicted with Oswald alone had to be obliterated. That had to be gone. And LBJ at one point says, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure I believe that the one bullet was used. This magic bullet happened. And Hoover says, no, I don't either. Well, you realize none of that was ever in the Warren Commission. They just rubber stamped the Oswald alone conclusion. So, and there's other people, just like we're going to talk about with Dorothy Kilgallen here, who got too close to the truth and ended up being poisoned in November of 1965. So an awful lot of cover-ups going on back then because Hoover had so much to lose. And LBJ too, if they ever looked into some of the things that Hoover had been doing in his life up to that point.
Bethesda Naval Hospital, I just looked it up.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
This article written here talks about in 1977, a National Photography magazine, Popular Photography, published an interview with Knudsen in which he stated he had photographed the president's autopsy and that it was, quote, the hardest assignment of my life, end quote. By the way, his family, his wife and son, again, I met the son, talked to him face to face, said that he was gone 3 days, that he had left for 3 days he'd left. And came back. Now, this attorney who investigates some of this stuff thinks that that Mr. Knudsen was telling the truth, and that he did take these pictures, and that he was shown pictures, I guess, during one of the hearings, and he was convinced that that's what he was at. This attorney here thinks that what he was at was a fake autopsy, and that he was led to believe that was the real autopsy. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know what all was going on, but I do know this: Mr. Knudsen's son told me to my face that he believed his father, died under very suspicious circumstances.
And a lot of people have under suspicious circumstances. And
by the way, he told his family, according to this article, that if this thing blows up, because he said he felt like there's some things going on. That's what the photographer, White House photographer Knudsen reportedly said to his family. And they gave interviews about it, that if this thing turns up to be, something, I want my family to know that I had nothing to do with it. Because he was warning his family that something doesn't seem right. There's shenanigans going on here. And if it turns out that's the case, I want you to know I had nothing to do with it.
Well, see, that can kind of turn our attention a little bit to the Warren Commission. I was a young man when JFK died. But like everybody else in the country, at that time, we trusted our officials, our government people. And we trusted J. Edgar Hoover when he said it was Oswald alone. We didn't ask questions. People ask me, why is the JFK assassination relevant today? And I say, because they didn't ask the right questions back then. And whatever your politics are, I don't care. But you need to ask questions of any government officials regarding what they're saying, because if you don't, then it's your own fault. And that's what happened way back then. They never asked the right questions. And the whole situation with the Warren Commission, Dorothy Kilgallen knew about corruption there. I had a witness of mine. You had a little bit ago up there an interview that I did at the Allen Library near Dallas, and I'm flabbergasted to say this to you, but there are now 15 million YouTube views of my presentations and interviews for The Reporter Who Knew Too Much was the bestseller. Denial of Justice, Collateral Damage, Fighting for Justice.
Wow.
And this guy watched that hearing, this one right here. It has 8 million views. And he called me and he said, I know Dorothy Kilgallen. And I said, you knew her? He said, yes. And he went in to tell me about a lot of things, but he became the legislative assistant to a senator named John Sherman Cooper, I think from Kentucky, who was on the commission. And he went to the hearings with Senator Cooper and found out that very few times were the members there to question the witnesses, including Oswald's wife and so on and so forth. It was just a slipshod, investigation. And also that there was a lot of corruption there. LBJ just wants to get this over with. He doesn't care about the truth. And this one, which is so important because, as I said, Dorothy Kilgallen started focusing never on Lee Harvey Oswald, but on Jack Ruby. And one of the things that Mr. Wolf, who I talked to that watched that video, said is that the commission knew about Jack Ruby's connections to organized crime, but they never did anything about it. So you see, I'm not surprised with what happened in Mr. Knudsen's situation, but just think about it if he had been able to go ahead and expose those photographs at the time and so on and so forth, just like so much other information, like Jefferson Morley is telling us at the hearing, things would have changed completely instead of this whole craziness about the Oswald situation. Hell, the 6-4 Museum at Daley Plaza, I tell people, is the biggest scam in American history because it's a shrine to Oswald alone. But this news that we're getting, and I hope we get some more from Gabbard with regard to the records she finds, will make a great difference. But Dorothy Kilgallen basically had been able to track down exactly what happened. That's one of the first. I mean,
look at that. November 29th. This is his presentation.
Oh, yes.
These are his
same
slides.
Day that the Warren Commission was convened.
Wow.
And then she wrote other ones. Some of them were just, she was always questioning what was going on. Nervous Ruby feels breaking point is near. Still live topic. It's the tragedy we cannot forget and we must investigate. DA to link Ruby to Oswald. Why did Oswald risk all by shooting the cop? A personal reaction to the Warren Commission. She wrote all of these. And obviously those people on the Warren Commission, Hoover, LBJ, Earl Warren, all of them knew that Dorothy Kilgallen was really questioning what had happened. And here was the death knell to why she died in 1965 that we should talk about.
Okay.
It became known that she was going to put all those columns and all of her investigation information into a book she was writing for Random House, a tell-all book she was writing for Random House. And we have proof of that because if you go back to watch What's My Line, Bennett Cerf is on that panel, and he was the founder and publisher of Random House, and he made a deal with her to write this book. Well, as you can imagine, anybody who had tried to cover up, were involved or had to cover up with the assassination, could not let that book be published. Now, we don't know what was in her JFK assassination files. We don't know what was in the manuscript because on November 8th, 1965, she was found dead in her townhouse bedroom, in a townhouse bedroom she never slept in, wearing her makeup, eyelash, and hairpiece. There was a book on her lap upside down. She had just returned from New Orleans where she had told friends, if the wrong people knew what I know about the assassination, it would cost me my life. I'm afraid for my life and my family. I bought a gun. Somebody is going to kill me. And she had connected Oswald, Ruby, and Jack, and Ruby and Marcello in New Orleans. And about 2 months later, she was dead.
And how did they kill her? How was the suicide staged? Because I'm assuming they said suicide, right?
Well, here's what happened, and we have to think about, I'm sure you know who Nick Pileggi is, the acclaimed author who wrote Wise Guy and Casino and all that.
Yeah.
He once told me that, Mark, the middle name of a Sicilian is revenge. And we know that this whole situation with regard to what happened to JFK began when Joe Kennedy knew they were going to lose the election in 1960 to Richard Nixon. They called in some of the mafia buddies they have. One of them was this Carlos Marcello. Robert Kennedy deported him to Central America, and when Marcello got back, he wanted to kill that SOB, as he said, but he knew if he did, the government would come after him with everything they had. So he orchestrated the death of JFK through his contacts in Dallas, and Dorothy knew all that. And so she had all this information, but we don't know what happened to her because she was found dead. Now, how did they do it? Well, it's interesting because I also talked to Congresswoman Luna about the Robert Kennedy investigation, because I have found new information connecting the Robert Kennedy assassination to Marcello as well, through a fresh witness I found in Southern California at a racetrack who knew Sirhan and saw him with two hoodlums, as he put it, two mafioso, just a day or so before RFK was killed. He was wearing an expensive suit, even though he was unemployed. He had money. And in fact, this all connects, if you recall, with the real puzzle to the Sirhan involvement in the assassination of Robert Kennedy. They found 4 crisp $100 bills in his pocket that didn't make any sense. And certainly it's logical to believe that came from those who set him up, just as Lee Harvey Oswald was set up as a patsy when Robert Kennedy died. So here's what happened. Marcello and J. Edgar Hoover, and they were very good friends. There's no question about that. They were protecting each other in some ways. Was able to compromise a romantic interest that Dorothy Kilgallen had, named Ron Pataki, who was a journalist in the Midwest, and find out what Dorothy Kilgallen had in her book she was going to write for Random House. They compromised him by getting rid of some of Pataki's gambling debts. On the night she died, we have proof that she was at a hotel near where What's My Line was filmed with Pataki. They were arguing. He left with her. And the next thing we know is that they found her the next morning. Now, the autopsy was done at the Manhattan Medical Examiner's Office, which I approved in the new book, Abuse of Power, and there's also some of it in Fighting for Justice and Collateral Damage too, that it was controlled by the mafia. I've been able to enter 4 or 5 people who work there. Sicilians were on the job. They were compromising the results and so on and so forth. And why that's important is because the investigation, there wasn't one. The verdict by the medical examiner's office was that she overdosed on barbiturates, get this, circumstances undetermined. And that was disseminated to the media. And so Dorothy Kilgallen basically was looked like a druggie of some sort when she had never had any drug problems at all. And then subsequent tests by 2 toxicologists that I interviewed for my books, they did not just find 1 barbiturate in her system, they found 3: seconal, phenobarbital, and Tulinol. And that combination, we believe, Pataki put into her drink, her vodka and tonic drink that night, and that's how she died.
Wow. And of course, this is all in your book, right?
Well, it's in the 4 books. You have to kind of go through them whatsoever. The first one was a reporter who knew too much, who introduces it's the one up, the third from the left there. That's the one that really introduced people to who Dorothy Kilgallen was. Denial of Justice, for the first time, has the transcripts. People would be interested in reading most of them about the Jack Ruby trial, where Dorothy learned that he had said, "I will be there when Lee Harvey Oswald is going to be transferred," was completely against what he said, that he happened to be there. And I believe Ruby was brought in to silence Lee Harvey Oswald. The attorney Melvin Belli, famous attorney in San Francisco, I practiced law with him in the 80s. I believe he was brought in to never let Ruby testify at trial, which is just what happened. Collateral Damage connected for the first time Marilyn Monroe, JFK, and Dorothy's deaths. And then, Fighting for Justice, I really got into exactly, that's the one on the right-hand side at the top. That's the one where I got into the Warren Commission corruption.
And now, of course, people don't talk about the next commission that was put together in the 70s that ended up saying that there was clearly a conspiracy to kill the President Kennedy. They always quote the Warren Commission. They never bother to quote that one from the 70s, do they?
Well, this is where the mainstream media really let us down. The House Select Committee on Assassinations, people don't know this, but they found out there was a plot to kill the president, and it probably was Carlos Marcello. But see, we never heard about that. The Church Committee was next. Senator Frank Church, you might remember, I think Idaho or Montana.
Idaho.
They did quite an investigation, and basically couldn't come up with any result other than there was a plot. And this is what's so disturbing to me. I found a 1965, I believe it is, and the title to it was Inquiry by CBS News. And I don't have a lot of faith in them or a lot of the news that comes from that side of the stage. But basically, they did this huge promoted Eric Severide, Walter Cronkite, all of the big names. They did this extensive supposed investigation of the JFK assassination. People can go up on YouTube and watch the 3 parts, and they came up with the fact that the Warren Commission was right. I mean, were they tone deaf, blind, whatever? I mean, it was obviously a situation where it was cover up through the Warren Commission, but the mainstream media really let us down. And Dorothy Kilgallen, in fact, her columns were kind of ignored at that particular time, when she really was the most credible source for what happened to JFK.
Now, were her files missing? Were there things missing that she had?
I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. When she died, her JFK assassination files were missing, and her manuscript book notes were missing as well. And I was able to go ahead and find out through Dorothy Kilgallen's. I don't like usually to use anything but primary source witnesses from one person to another or to me, but I was able to find out through Dorothy Kilgallen's butler's daughter, when I interviewed her in New York extensively, that her father told her that just within 2 or 3 hours of Dorothy's death, agents or thugs or whatever she called them raced into and raided Kilgallen's apartment or her townhouse and took all of her JFK files and her book manuscript. We have not ever been able to find that. I've tried to do that. I tried to do it through DA Cyrus Vance in the New York Manhattan's office, tried to do it through the NYPD, and lately I had the worst experiences I could ever have. When I was a criminal defense lawyer, I always got cooperation from DAs, but I tangled up with Alvin Bragg and his office, and I sent them a memo with a letter. I think it was 65 pages long, as to why there needs to be a new investigation of Dorothy Kilgallen's death and so on and so forth that way. In fact, it came about, he accepted it on the same day that, maybe you remember this, but there was a big brouhaha about a new film coming out from, that had Robert De Niro and other people in it in Hollywood, called Assassination. And Barry Levinson was directing it. And we found out that basically these people had stolen my research from my books, including in Fighting for Justice, where I have the only account of Dorothy having a back channel into the Warren Commission. I quickly got some help from colleagues and whatever, and we were able to put a stop to that movie being produced. But Alvin Bragg, they never even gave me the courtesy of getting back to me. Wow. And I really was disappointed with that, but with everything else that I know about that man, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But I'm not going to give up on this, because I believe, number one, she deserves an investigation, and I told Congresswoman Luna that. And second, I think those files and the manuscript are still out there somewhere. I tried the FBI files. I never even heard back from them either, but I'm not going to stop trying to get Dorothy the justice she deserves and find those files and that manuscript.
So you think that perhaps they could be found in these Tulsi Gabbard documents? Because she said there's several boxes. They have been, they're decades old. They've never been scanned.
I said a prayer before these new, I suppose maybe we shouldn't do that. Shouldn't ask the good Lord for things like this. But I asked that when these new records came out, hey, maybe they'll be in there. Not one mention of Dorothy Kilgallen. Not one mention of Carlos Marcello. So now that you've told me about Gabbard's search here, I may do another prayer when those come out. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, because the government is so good at covering up things. And again, I'm not playing politics with this. You go back in history and you just see that many times we are not told the truth. Now, I commend Congresswoman Luna, because she basically said, we are going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to get to the truth. And I've asked her to be interviewed, testify in the second hearing, and I hope she'll let me do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I want to play, guys in the control room, I want to play what she said yesterday, if I could find it real quick, in the cabinet, where she said, look, we've got these files. Let me see, I think I just found it here, guys. Because it sounds like you haven't heard this. Is that right, sir?
I have not, and isn't it wild that these boxes are, what are they, in somebody's garage or something? I mean, come on.
I know. Here we go. Here it is.
And lastly, we've been scanning. I've had over 100 people working around the clock to scan the paper around RFK, Senator Robert F. Kennedy's assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. These have been sitting in boxes in storage for decades. They have never been scanned or seen before. We'll have those ready to release here within the next few days.
That's great. Bobby, how do you feel about that?
I'm very gratified to hear.
That's hitting close to home, isn't it? When you think, I'm thinking about Bobby when that statement's made.
I'm very grateful to you, Mr.
Very grateful to you. Thoughts on that, Mark? What are your thoughts on what you just heard?
Well, I we all just want the truth. We all want to know what happened. And Dorothy Kilgallen deserves to have all of those records looked through to see if there's anything in there and a new investigation and all of that. So I commend these people because we've never, let's face it, we've never gotten this kind of cooperation. But I know, and it was talked about at the hearing a little bit, there's 2,400 FBI documents that were never given to the National Archives. And I was able to find, just through some of my research, one thing in there that needs to be exposed, and that is a confession by Carlos Marcello in 1978, I believe it, maybe 86, while he was in prison, when he trusted a fellow inmate, and they have a recording of this. I'm glad JFK is dead. I wish I could have done it myself, but I'm glad I was able to get him killed. Something like that. See, that needs to be exposed, and it hasn't been heard before. Perhaps that will be in these documents that Gabbard is going to get. I hope so.
What do you make of the reports that Oswald was somehow connected to some lady involved in vaccines or investigating vaccines and tied to cancer and her murder? Do you know what I'm talking about, the story I'm talking about?
Is that Mary, what's her name? Pinchot
I
Meyer?
think so. Yes, I think that's it.
Well, there's another great mystery for you. I guess I'm the champion of true crime murder mysteries. But the only thing that bothered me about the hearing was an awful lot of speculation. It could have been the FBI, it could have been the mob, it could have been this, it could have been that. You don't have to do that. There's a straight line between what Dorothy was able to research and find and put in her columns and everything. But this woman was a remarkable woman. And yes, it was another one of JFK's philanderings. But she was a little older than most of them. I think quite a bit older than most of them, if I remember. And a very smart and respected woman. And they believed, at least, that she had gotten hold of some documents, CIA documents, she shouldn't have had. And if you remember, it was a very suspicious death because they found her, somebody shot her down by the canal there, not too far from the White House. And they arrested somebody right away in typical Hoover fashion, but they finally figured out it couldn't have been him. That has never been solved as to what happened. And so, yes, there is that speculation out there that she was the mistress who knew too much, just like Dorothy Kilgallen was the reporter who knew too much. People have asked me to investigate that case, and I have to say I would do it in a minute. But there's been so many investigations, and nobody has really been able to figure out exactly what happened, because just like happened with Dorothy Kilgallen's situation, any evidence that is really practical with regard to Pinchot somehow or another is hidden from us.
Have you ever been threatened or warned or told, hey, back off?
Yes, I do get some very strange emails.
That if you want to study relationships,
you do.
Yes, I do. I get strange, especially. I haven't been very friendly to the Kennedy family. Not John, certainly not Ted, and Bobby Kennedy. Frankly, because I believe that Bobby Kennedy is. I will say this, and I hope I'll probably get some more emails that people don't like it. But I think Bobby Kennedy's actions to have deported Carlos Marcello, double-crossed him and the other mafioso by doing that, and when he got back in the country, then charging with racketeering, really is the trigger point. If you think about it, that's probably not a good phrase, but trigger point to JFK's death, to Dorothy Kilgallen's, frankly, also Marilyn Monroe, which I've proven in my books, and Bobby Kennedy's own assassination in 1968. His actions were well thought out. He hated the mafia. He wanted to get rid of them. But I just want to tell you just a quick story so you'll know what you cannot do. When I was a correspondent for Good Morning America for 2 or 3 years in the 70s, they sent me to Philadelphia to interview the lawyer for Angelo Bruno, who was the king mafioso in Philadelphia about them infiltrating the Atlantic City gambling operation. I went to Philadelphia. I interviewed this guy. I was shocked at what he told us because, you know, they have the omerta swearing where you never talk about these kind of things. Well, they played that the next morning on Good Morning America. It was a huge hit. And the host at that time was David Hartman.
Oh, yeah.
And he called me and said, Mark, are you still there? I said, yeah, in Philadelphia. Go see if you can interview him again. So I got on the phone. I called this gentleman's, I always get a chill when I say this. I called his office, and this woman answered. It was dead silence, and then I could tell she was crying. I said, are you okay? She said, well, Mr. Shaw, I guess you don't know. This morning when my boss started his car, it blew him up.
Whoa.
So you can't mess around with those guys. You know, just like Nick Pileggi said, revenge and all of that. So you can't mess around with that. So Bobby Kennedy was playing with dynamite when he deported Carlos Marcello, and Dorothy Kilgallen believed it, and I certainly do, that was the that led to these other deaths that occurred in the subsequent years. You know, we have to try to remember, you've got the death of Marilyn in 62, JFK in 63, Dorothy in 65, and Robert Kennedy in 68, and Martin Luther King's murder is somewhere in there. So this was a tragic time in our country when these icons, we might call them, were all eliminated by murder.
And how much of it do you think is not just the mafia, but the CIA and or FBI? Because I've interviewed Judge Joe Brown, who was an attorney here in Shelby County, a judge here in Shelby County that was looking into the files to deal with the retrial, or at least an investigation into trying to clear James Earl Ray, who doesn't seem to be there was any evidence he actually did it. I don't think the King family thought he did it either. And there are, I think, two very high powerful rifles that were owned by the FBI that went missing. And Judge Joe Brown believes those shots came from top of the fire station to Lorraine Hotel that took out Martin Luther King Jr. So how much do you think the FBI, the CIA, and the mob together have been involved in these assassinations?
Dorothy believed, as I do, that Marcello was the one who orchestrated JFK's death, and J. Edgar Hoover and the Warren Commission protected that information. As far as that CIA speculation has to be there, because if people learned anything from this hearing, it was that the investigation of John F. Kennedy's death was a wild goose chase. I read a lot of those documents. I didn't read all 80,000, but I had read thousands of them over the years. And if you want to know anything about the investigation, basically you can see that at times they spent, I think, 25 agents to Helsinki, Finland, to find out why Oswald was there, where he stayed, and then how long would have taken him to have driven his rental car to the airport, because that was important with tying in something else. It was a wild goose chase. They had no, and in the hearing, they talk about all the lies that the CIA did, all the dirty tricks and so on. They had no intention of figuring out what happened to JFK. And as far as the FBI, Hoover shut that down right away. The first thing when he did, Oswald alone, steal the body, autopsy, it's Oswald alone, so on and so forth. So, you know, the government had no intention of ever telling us the truth.
What role do you think Lyndon Baines Johnson played in the assassination of President Kennedy? Because my friend Roger Stone thinks, he wrote the book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy. He thinks LBJ was heavily involved.
Well, I know Roger, and I have some respect for him at times. We disagree at times. If you look at motive, who had the greatest motive to have killed JFK? Well, I believe, and Dorothy Kilgallen believed, and many others do, of course, it's Marcello, because he benefited from the crime. Marcello did. The Justice Department never went after those guys again. Bobby Kennedy was powerless because he resigned as Attorney General. But LBJ obviously had the greatest benefit because he became President of the United States. I'd be interested to know what Roger thinks of this, because I found a KBG account actually believing that it was LBJ who was behind the death of JFK, and I put that in one of my books. I can't remember which one it was. But also, you know, LBJ had kind of a shady past.
Oh, yeah.
What was it, Billy Saul Estes and others? And
oh, yeah, he was being investigated. Roger reports in his book that Bobby and JFK agreed that they weren't putting LBJ back on the ticket. He was under investigation. He may have even found himself going to jail.
That's right. And so he could have done something, but you know, he got out of all of it. If remember, he resigned as president and never had anything to do with any of the investigations or anything else like that. My favorite photograph for people who like that sort of thing is in Fighting for Justice, and it's at the LBJ Ranch. And standing there, I don't know, 6 feet 2 or 3 or whatever he was, is LBJ in his cowboy boots. And next to him, at probably 5'9" at the most, is Allen Dulles. And I was thinking, what in the world were they talking about that day when they were riding horses around LBJ's ranch?
Well, isn't that interesting? Because Kennedy had gotten rid of Dulles at the CIA, and then Dulles ends up being plopped onto the Warren Commission, correct?
Yeah, figure that out, right?
And I think, I may have found that photograph.
Okay.
I don't know if this is the right year or not. Here's one of them that I found, but again, I don't know if that's the correct year, but there's one picture.
That's it. I don't think that may be him, but that's not, anyway, that's not the one that I put in the book. So also, if you can, I think this was interesting, if you got the time, go in there and find the photograph of the Warren Commission members giving the Warren Commission report to LBJ, because I want to point something out to you. It's a confirmation that I almost missed. You know, I hope that people who watch this will get in touch with me, because we have 5,000 emails, and I answer every one of them from all around the world. People give me tips about things, and one of them came from somebody who said, Mark, you've said that there were problems with corruption at the Warren Commission, and they didn't go ahead and put the dissent in that Senator Cooper and Senator Russell wanted. Go look at that photograph if you can, and you'll see what the expression is and what the two senators were doing. There you go. All right. So here is Senator Richard Russell, and he and Cooper, who's over here, were demanding a dissent in the final commission report, that they didn't believe in the single bullet theory and thus in the single shooter theory. That was not in the final report. They will double cross. Look at the expression on Senator Russell's face.
Which one is he? Which one is he?
He's right next to Earl Warren. There's LBJ, Earl Warren, and then Ford, and then Richard Russell. On the other side is Dulles, Senator John Sherman Cooper, and Representative Hale Boggs. Look how Senator Cooper is almost hiding behind Boggs and has a look on his face at LBJ like he could strangle him. They were so upset with the Warren Commission report that it didn't have that dissent in there. And just think again, what would have been the difference? Oswald alone theory has lasted for 1,000 years now. If those kinds of dissents would have been in that final report, then what? There would have been more investigations, and we would have gotten more information about what really happened in Dallas in 1963.
So you do agree that there's likely that LBJ was also involved?
We were certainly involved in the cover-up. There's no question about that. He and his buddy Hoover. And I get upset sometimes because I talked about Jefferson Morley, for instance, at the hearing. And I had talked to him. He knows all about Dorothy Kilgallen's investigation. And I had insisted to him, if he would, when he was in the hearing, please, she deserves, and the American public deserve, to hear at least a little about her investigation. And when I watched the program, I was disappointed. Maybe there were other reasons for it. but he had a couple opportunities because it came about the CIA and it came about this and that and everything, the Cubans, all of that, where he could have let people know about Dorothy Kilgallen's investigation, and mine for that matter, but he chose not to do so. And it's the same kind of thing. It reminded me of all those people who knew what really happened to JFK in 1963-64, and yet they didn't speak up. That's why I say again, anybody listening to this, go ahead and speak up, vote, speak up, and ask questions with regard to anybody from the government or anybody else, your boss or anybody else, because if you don't, it's your own fault.
What a fascinating interview. I need to get you back, but I want to show his books one more time. Here they are right here. And the website is markshawbooks.com. Markshawbooks.com, excuse me. Markshawbooks.com. What a fascinating interview. Thank you so much for making time for us this evening. And I hope you'll come back, because I think we're just scratching the surface, and we can also talk about several other books as well that you've written.
Well, I want to do that, but I want to commend you, because I do a lot of these interviews, and you're very well prepared. You're very knowledgeable. You did your homework and all of that. And that really makes it possible for me to talk about those things. So I'm happy to be here, but I really am appreciative of how you handled the interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm just seeing right here, you got another book that I really definitely want to talk to you about, and that is Miscarriage of Justice. Because, I don't know if you know this, I have a full-time reporter on the ground in Israel. And my reporter just saw him recently there in Israel, walked up and thanked him.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't mind, a quick connection with the records that came out and Jonathan Pollard.
Yeah.
All right. So they left some of the phone numbers and Social Security numbers in the records, right?
Right.
One of them was that of Joseph de Geneva.
Oh, yeah.
Who was the Attorney General, was he, of state of New York at the time, or a big shot?
And he was a special prosecutor for the DOJ at one time.
And he was a special prosecutor on Jonathan Pollard's spy case, as I put in that Miscarriage of Justice book.
Whoa.
And there was a deal for Jonathan Pollard to get not a long sentence, not a short sentence, but something in between. And at the hearing for the final sentencing, de Geneva double-crossed Pollard and his lawyers, and Jonathan Pollard ended up with life in prison. Now, I've never tried to judge what he did in terms of spying for Israel or whatever. People think it was awful, terrible. I got a lot of very pointed, let's say, emails and a couple phone calls where people believed I should never have even looked into that case. But I was pleased finally that he was released. And that's quite an interesting situation that your reporter over there ran into Jonathan Pollard. That's very, very interesting. Meant to be.
Yep, walked up to him, thanked him for his stand. And of course, our reporter, being Israeli, was talking to us here in America. It's like, I know that this may go the wrong way with some Americans, but, he said, this is how I feel about him. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting story. So we should probably have you back on that and a couple other stories as well. Thank you again, Mr. Shaw, for your time.
Thank you, sir. You're a good man.
You too. Thank you, sir. Mark Shaw. What a fascinating interview, folks. Check out markshawbooks.com. markshawbooks.com. There they are. He's written several books that I didn't know he had written on topics I didn't know he'd written about. So I definitely need to get him back to talk about a few of these. Absolutely fascinating, and appreciate his time this evening. Joining me now is Mark Knott. You see him as a regular guest on Neil McCabe's program. Of course, Neil has now had to go and take a break until December working on a special project. But we're going to have him now on our show more often. So this will be his first time appearance here. Mark has a breaking news story out of New Jersey. And apparently they're about to be investigated by someone close within the circle of President Donald Trump. He's here to tell us about it. Mark, welcome to Brandon House Live. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Great to have you here, my friend. Tell us what's happening in New Jersey.
Yeah, so interesting enough is, we've seen Elena Habba. She's the, everybody knows she's the new U.S. attorney for New Jersey. And she was on Sean Hannity recently, and she said that she is now launching an investigation into Governor Murphy and also the Attorney General Matt Placken of New Jersey because they are not following essentially executive orders and not following years and years of precedent. What they're doing is in the state of New Jersey is they are now ordering their police officers in New Jersey not to cooperate with ICE as far as administrative civil warrants that come out for illegal aliens to essentially detain them. And New Jersey is saying no, not gonna arrest illegal aliens.
And isn't it Paterson, New Jersey, that they've just declared is going to be the American capital of the Palestinian state?
Yes, but this is going to sweep way more than that, Brandon, because this directive it has some very interesting implications. Obviously, there's the no arrest, okay, but it goes further and says not to contact ICE at all. Not to contact the federal authorities at all, that the police have encounters with these people. Also, this is an interesting one, no reporting with NCIC hits. What that means is the national database that the federal government and the police use when they detect someone who's here unlawfully, there's an exchange of information. It's called a hit confirmation. And what this directive is doing, what the state of New Jersey is doing across the entire state is that when police encounter someone who has an administrative warrant, an ICE detainer, if you will, it is that they are not even to put that in the record, to put that on in the radio, to put that in the CAD report, the computer-aided dispatch, not to put that in any way that the federal government can see that they've encountered these people, Brandon. It's interesting.
Very, very troublesome because, again, not only do we have illegals, but now we have illegal Islamists coming in and taking over New Jersey. And apparently the red carpet's been rolled out. I want to play this video. This is over on your X feed, and I'll show your X feed here in just a second. But listen to this. Listen to this, guys.
My family, for example, came from Ireland, and now I'm the colonel who oversees the New Jersey State Police. In the United States, not all law enforcement officers are the same. Some work for the federal government and are responsible for enforcing civil immigration law. Others, like the police officers you see every day in your town, have a different role. They work for state or local governments. They focus on protecting public safety, not enforcing immigration law. To help make this distinction clear, the state of New Jersey recently issued new rules that limit the types of voluntary assistance that state and local officers can provide to federal immigration authorities, including ICE. Here are a few examples. Under the new rules, New Jersey police officers cannot participate in civil immigration enforcement operations. They cannot stop, question, arrest, search, or detain you simply because they think you might be undocumented. They cannot ask your immigration status, except in the rare cases when it is relevant to a specific criminal investigation. And if you are arrested, they cannot allow federal civil immigration authorities to interview you in jail without your permission. The rules apply to all state and local officers in New Jersey. That includes me. As police officers, we can't do our job without the trust of the communities we serve. These new rules help to strengthen that trust. We want this message to reach as many New Jersey residents as possible. That's why we recorded this video in nearly a dozen languages, using police officers from around the state who grew up speaking a different language at home. To learn more and to watch the other videos, visit nj.gov/trust. Thank you.
Yeah, trust, really? Who's supposed to trust you, meathead? Come on, really? We want you to trust us. Who? The Islamist? The illegal? The cartel? The Sinaloa network? Who do you want to trust you, meathead?
Right. So, I just report. Okay. So when I look at what New Jersey, as you can see there, that is the colonel of New Jersey State Police, Callahan. And what New Jersey is standing on are two things. The first thing is they're saying, hey, these warrants, by the way, 27,000 were just added to NCIC. So 27,000 active warrants have just been added. The chances of law enforcement encountering these people, especially in New Jersey, is high. So the first thing is they're ordering the police not to do that, and they're saying that they're making the real distinction between a quote unquote civil warrant and a criminal warrant, saying criminal is signed by a judge. So there's a judicial process. These quote unquote administrative civil warrants are essentially done through administrative processes. Now, of course, if and when the people that are wanted administratively, when they're detained, they would be detained, and then they would have a deportation hearing, a removal hearing. So there is still due process. This is only the arrest phase, but New Jersey isn't going to cooperate with that. But the second thing, which New Jersey is really, really standing on, and you heard it right there, the Colonel alluding to it, is that this is for public safety, and this builds public trust. Because what they're saying is, because by the very nature of the federal government, that people who are here illegally don't want to go to the police, go to any police, go to the local police to report crimes, report that they're a victim of anything. So, it's sort of, whether it's a fallacy or not, you decide. But the state of New Jersey is standing on its pro-public safety, not to cooperate with federal authorities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I wonder where they were on that when it came to rounding up J6ers, right? Apparently, they're only for standing up for the federal agents when the federal agents agree with their worldview, which is anti-law and order. So I'm sure they were helping round up J6ers with no problem, kicking their doors down, raiding their homes, when they could have very easily just called them up and said, who's your attorney? We'll work with your attorney. You can surrender yourself, go to court, bond out, wait for your court date. No. We had to run around the country and kick doors in. I'm pretty sure the government of New Jersey, I'm guessing, I don't know, but I would venture to guess they were all in full effect with that. Now, and the reason I'm a little wound up on this, Mark, is because I just did a whole hour on radio today at 1 o'clock about the Islamization of America, where they're taking down Texas. The Islamists are building big, huge compounds all over the place. We have, these Islamists saying the most horrific things about the Jews during their Friday sermons, and these guys are taking over. We've got the mayor of Minneapolis letting them put out their call to prayer multiple times a day. We've got this going on in New York. We've got this going on all over the country. And everybody seems to be bowing down for those who do not want to come here and assimilate and uphold the constitutional republic, but to let them come in here, get a foothold to destroy the republic. And so this is, in keeping with what we were talking about on radio today, which, by the way, let's bring up New Jersey, because that's where we're at. This is how bad it's getting with the police in New Jersey. If I can find the clip real quick. We've got a police officer, here it is, Paterson, New Jersey. Now, I think this is where they're declaring this is going to be the Palestinian capital for America. Paterson officer draws scrutiny for wearing Palestinian flag on his uniform. Really? I mean, we've got October 7th that happened. We know what all this is really about. And by the way, where is the Palestinian state? Where is that? What was their currency? Oh, wait a minute. There's never been one. That was a Roman emperor who said, let's call it Philistine to insult the Jews because their greatest arch enemy is the Philistines. This is not Palestine. They are not from that area. We can go into the DNA. We can go into the science. This is all fabricated. But I don't know what's happening to New Jersey, but your state is melting down, and it seems like it's happening with law enforcement at the top.
Right. So perhaps and maybe definitely it is. But I think the fact that Elena Haba is the U.S. attorney for New Jersey now, it means something, right? Because she's not a no name. She's a recognized name. She is associated with President Trump through and through. So here you could pick anybody. There's 100 seasoned attorneys, well-versed criminal attorneys or government officials that could have filled that slot. But you have Elena Haba, and she's probably one of the few people who has a direct line to the president. So I don't think this is by anything other than major design to put her in New Jersey to address these New Jersey issues. Remember, New Jersey was close to electing President Trump last November, and this is a governor's race coming up this year, and I'm calling it essentially President Trump's first semester report card. Okay, this is the weather vane, and I don't think it is anything other than major design to put her there to try to establish some Magus America First and some law and order back in New Jersey, Brandon.
Yeah, well, you're the guarded state, right?
Yes.
You need it. You need to have some law and order and common sense prevail. I'm glad she's there. That's for sure. Let's show his X account. Here it is at Mark Naughton, number 9 at MarkNaughton, and then the number 9. And you're really covering what? New Jersey, New York. What you're concentrating on? I know New Jersey, but are you also concentrating New York? You're kind of known for this, right?
Yes, New York, Philly, DC, South Florida. I have some ties down there. So most things East Coast, but social, legal, political, major protest, things like that. But because New Jersey is, like I said, the national test right now. It's the test of MAGA, America First, and the first major election. So I'm here. I'm in New Jersey, so I'm also covering New Jersey. Brad.
You're also, I just learned, a 20-year veteran of the military. You were in the military for 20 years?
Yes. I did 18 in the Air Force and the Air National Guard, and I switched to the Army, and I'm an officer candidate, hopefully expected to graduate with a commission here pretty soon.
Oh, wait, so you're still in the military?
Yes, part-time. I'm in the Army National Guard.
All right, okay. What did you do in the Air Force?
I did emergency management, like NBC stuff for a couple of years, and then I did 12 years in security forces, so military police type.
And now that I realize you're still in the military, and I have been as blunt as I have on this broadcast, let me say the views and opinions expressed by the host are not necessarily those of Mark Knott, because I do not want to get him in trouble. So I will make a clear deviation between my comments and Mark. I had no idea that right now you're still in the military.
Yes, and it's also a beautiful thing being National Guard is there is some slight differences in sort of the rules and media hits and stuff like that. So, but I pride myself in being able to stay within the confines of the rules and the laws and the First Amendment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate your service to our country and the political news and information you're bringing to us tonight. So thank you, Mark. Hope folks will follow you on his X account right there on the screen. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Brandon.
Mark, checking in tonight. Follow him on X. There it is, right there on the screen. All right, follow him. And again, folks, we're brought to you by you. So please don't forget worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. I'm not Aaron. Why is Aaron's name up on the screen? Look at that. I got a promotion. Right, guys? Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Worldviewtube.com/sponsors. And don't forget, this coming Tuesday night, we'll be in Milwaukee. We will be having our rally, our Worldview Radio rally. Well over 1,200 now register between phone and online. And you can do that as well by going to worldviewtube.com/events to get registered. Worldviewtube.com/events. If you want to register, you can do that. We'd love to have you there. Worldviewtube.com/events. We will take an offering, so come prepared for that with a check for the foundation, or cash works too. We'll take an offering to help offset our cost, hopefully just break even on the evening. If you'd like to live stream it, we are making it available. We'll have 5 cameras there going, available for Vault members. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault for more details to join. You can join for as little as like $7.99 a month or something. Let me go check. Is that right? I want to be accurate here. $7.99 a month. If you join at the year price, it breaks down to $7.99 a month. You can do a 6-month for $8.99, or you can go ahead and join month to month if that's what you prefer for $9.99. So go ahead and join, and you not only will get access to 35 years of my radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, documentaries, conference DVDs. You'll get access to live streaming events. One of them being our Tuesday night Worldview Radio rally in Waukesha at the Waukesha Expo Center. Doors open at 5:30. It starts at 6:30. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault. All right. Again, you'll find all of our sponsors there at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You know I love Bella Grace. The powerful elixir has 3 powerful ingredients, 80 clinical trials behind it. I do hope you'll check it out. I'm not going to say more about it other than that. And then there's the skincare. Melissa loves that. And she loves the Bella Trim. That's all natural weight management. That has all kinds of cardiac health benefits. And then the restorative sleep. These are gummies. She takes 2 of those a night. They're all natural. Helps her to stay asleep. Some of you need help getting to sleep. She needs help staying asleep. So there you go. She loves their products. I use this one right now, just this one. But she loves all of their products. I hope you'll check them out. MelissaHouseBG.com. MelissaHouseBG.com. Of course, as you know, we do the Gatatana. And I say we, that is Melissa and I and Dolly. Dolly gets a half a scoop on her food every day. They have a specific pet product, but you don't have to order that. There's that cat that had the tumor, got it on Gatatana, tumor went away. You don't have to order the pet product. You can actually just share your Gatatana if you want with your pet. That's what I do. 90 billion plant cells, that's the equivalent thereof, with 1 scoop, loaded with trace minerals, which are great for the pets, according to studies, amino acids and protein and all kinds of essential minerals and vitamins that are important for us as well. So I hope you'll check it out. The sales for this have absolutely spiked. And well, they should, particularly after we saw the testimony of the man that was behind it, Tom Hunter, I think that was his name. He tells his personal story on YouTube about being diagnosed with terminal cancer in his lungs, and then getting on this because he was raising it for his shellfish. He started eating it, went in for surgery, and a white film was over his lungs. They took 11 biopsies. They all came back benign. He went on to live another 10 years, retired to Hawaii. I'm not making any claims. I'm just telling you his story. In fact, it was printed up there in Canada. They did a news story on it. I think I have a picture of that right here, of the news story of Tom Hunter. There it is right there. And they went on to his daughter and him be interviewed about it. And so there you go. So since we've talked about it, shared his story, the sales have spiked. A lot of people getting a subscription to this. And well, you should. I drink it every day. I take it along with my Numi. I swish with my Numi, and I take my Bella Grace. Speaking of Numi, Numi is a powerful product that's loaded with glutathione. Glutathione helps remove, bad things from your body, detoxes your cells. Some studies show that glutathione may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Check that out, swishforlife.com, swishforlife.com. But again, please check out all of our sponsors, would you? Check out all of our sponsors over at worldviewtube.com/sponsors, including our water filter that removes all kinds of toxins, including putting oxygen and other things into the system of the water as well. Powerful water purifier there. The chemicals, I saw another article, that takes out the chemicals. I saw another article today about drugs being, potentially at risk because of China, as President Trump likes to say. So again, you might want to order up your prescription meds and have some on hand, because I saw another article today. I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about the fact that China makes a lot of our pharmaceuticals. And if you don't want to find yourself without antibiotics in a time of crisis, you might want to go ahead and stock up. I was looking for the article. I can't find it. Maybe I'll share it with you next week. But go ahead, get your meds right now, your medical kits, worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com. You can join their medical plans as well, but otherwise get their kits, like the wellness company, the blue one. I have one right here, in fact, moxicillin, ivermectin, other things. But man, if you get sick and you need meds, you do not want to be without antibiotics. Like we said last night, be careful. You don't want to overdo it. Take them only when you need them. But boy, when you need them, it could be difference between life and death. And if China, we go to war with them, or they do a blockade around Taiwan, and we find ourselves in a conflict, they may just decide to stop shipping stuff. So I would go ahead and get up on this right away. Worldviewhealthcare.com, worldviewhealthcare.com. Check out all of our sponsors, and they help us keep this program going out to you each and every night. Well, that's our broadcast for tonight here on April 11th, 2024. And again, if you appreciate what we're doing, we sure appreciate your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. That's one of the ways you can support us, folks, that is so powerful, because our foundation helps us cover thousands of dollars in bandwidth bills and storage bills of those files, and helps us to develop a lot of the apps like Roku channel, these different apps where we're pushing out free streaming programming. Again, we can put it all behind a paywall, but we try to push it out for free for you, 99.9% of what we do. So your foundation support is vital. WorldviewFoundation.com. Don't forget, you'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Roll the theme music. Let's call it a night. Hope you have a great weekend. Now, I will not be here teaching on Sunday night live for my Sunday night class, teaching through the book of Revelation, because we have to get ready to go to Milwaukee. We're going to be in Milwaukee on Tuesday night, and I got to prepare my brand new keynote presentation I'll be delivering Tuesday night, and that's going to be on Satanism, globalism, and spiritual deception. Did you know there's a strong connection between Satanism and Marxism and globalism? Yep, and its push for world government and spiritual deception. That's my talk, so I'm going to be working on that, folks, so can't do Sunday night. Sorry, Lord willing, be back the next weekend. But in the meantime, I hope you will continue to pray for us, get registered for that big event at worldviewtube.com/events, or to live stream it as a Vault member, worldviewtube.com/vault. All right? Take care. May God save America.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome. Glad you guys are with us on this April 11th, 2025. Happy birthday, Logan. Number 22 for Logan here on April 11th. 2025. We have our Middle East update, Bible prophecy update. Don't forget, folks, that's what we're going to do today with Dr. Andy Woods. He'll join us in just 1 second. But don't forget, we're busy around here, packing up cameras, packing up equipment, getting ready to head our way to Milwaukee, to the Waukesha Expo Center. We'll have about 5 cameras rolling that night to catch this big crowd. We're well over 1,200 registered now between phone registrations and online. And we're going to have our cameras there, 5 of them, I'm told, grabbing that. And it's still available for you to register free of charge. Worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. And if you do not have a computer, and I know some of you don't, you can register by texting Melissa or calling her, leaving a voicemail, and she'll add you to the tally. So we have enough seats out. 901-825-0652, 901-825-0652. I'll give it one more time. 901-825-0652. And if you'd like to live stream it, we're going to make that available for our Vault members. More details on that at worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. Myself, Dr. Andy Woods, and our reporter from Israel will be with us in the building, Aaron Lavarco. Hey, will all of you pray for safety in travel? Pray that we do not get run over by a semi-truck driven by illegal aliens from the Middle East or somewhere else. I'm not joking. My wife actually just read another story to me yesterday of a family killed. It was a wife and her children on their way to be with her husband and the children's father in Florida, and they were killed. Pray for that family. I don't know their name, but the Lord knows their name. But, I don't know, maybe it's just as you get older and you young people think they're invincible, don't they? But as you get older, you really realize how short life is, how you can be here 1 minute, gone the next. And so again, pray for our safety in travel, all the safety in travel for all the people that would be traveling. I heard of one family that's coming 5 hours to be there with us. Talk about life and the brevity of it. The tragic story of that helicopter crash yesterday in New York. More footage came out today showing the blades, the helicopter blades, just flying off of that thing. And I actually, when I watched the video footage, the new angle that's come out today, I counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, because I thought, how long did those poor people have to realize what was going on? And from the time the blade flew off until it hit the water, and I counted it twice out, was 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a long time when you're falling to the earth. They knew what was about to happen. How tragic. But again, it shows us the brevity of life. So folks, if you're not sure about where you would be if that were you, or if you were in a car crash, I would urge you today, make today the day of salvation by just simply placing your faith and trust in Christ, believing in his work on the cross, nothing that we can do to earn our salvation. There's no one good, no, not one. It's not by works, lest any man should boast. And that's justification. Then sanctification, ongoing faithfulness and obedience. Life is very, very fragile. And we see that pretty much every day. We saw a plane crash today. Everything seems to be caught on camera now, doesn't it? A plane crash today. What was that? Boca Raton, Florida? Yeah. And I mean, boom, into the ground. How many on that plane? 3? I think about 3 on that one. I'm not getting on small planes anyway. I'm not getting on a helicopter, and I'm not getting on a small plane, that's for sure. So I guess that's 2 ways to at least try to cut down the risk. But those planes, But yeah, the brevity of life, right? Well, joining me now is Dr. Andy Woods. Dr. Woods, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Brandon, great to be here.
Great to have you with us. I want to go right away to one of the articles that we've been following, of course, and that is the one about what I'm calling the takedown of Texas, because clearly there is an orchestrated move to take down your state. Now, what we found out from the Rare Foundation this week is that, here it is, Mecca comes to Texas. Sugar Land officials handed the town square to a Pakistani propagandist, blacklisted in India. And what are they doing? Broadcasting Islamic supremacy. Now, here's the issue, folks. Dr. Woods is in Sugar Land. This is a suburb of Houston. He's in Sugar Land, and he is a pastor there. He lives there. And this is going on right in your backyard. Tell us about it, please, Dr. Woods.
Well, it was sort of a jarring thing. I mean, we've been talking about the penetration of Islam into America for an awful long time. And now we're running into these stories where it's actually happening. Let me give you some strategic places. There's something called EPIC. That stands for the East Plano Islamic Center. There's something called the DMCC. That stands for the Dallas Muslim Community Center. There's been this kind of thing happening at Pflugerville, Texas, where it's so severe that they took Main Street and renamed it Palestine Way. The same phenomenon is happening in Blue Ridge, Texas. And then people probably already know about Patterson, New Jersey, where the police officers there are wearing on their uniforms the Palestinian flag. So the latest outburst is what just happened in my town, a great place to live, by the way, Sugar Land, Texas, where at the end of Ramadan, all of a sudden we learned that there was an Islamic call to prayer. The town square there, town center as we call it, which I'm extremely familiar with. I know that downtown Sugar Land area like the back of my hand. It's like this happened in my own backyard, essentially. The town square was filled with, I would guess, because I know the dimensions of the town square pretty well, somewhere between 500 to maybe up to 1,000 Muslims, with their prostrate towards faces towards Mecca and Medina, participating in this call to prayer. And then the organizer of the event stood up, and the Rare Foundation article has all of the videos of this happening, so it's not a matter of hearsay. Basically stood up, and in the background, right there on city council steps, is like a giant screen. And I want people to understand that that wasn't a poster of Mecca and Medina. That was a live feed. So as the Muslims go to Mecca to circle this giant cube, I think they circle it 7 times. I think it's called a Kaaba, if I've got it right. I was on with Sharam Hadian yesterday, and he was sort of helping me with some of the vocabulary. But the point I'm trying to make is the guy stands up and he says, with technology, for the very first time, we are connecting what is happening live feed in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca and Medina, with Sugarland. And so, as this article from the Rare Foundation points out, this is not just pluralism, diversity. It's not just, oh, isn't it nice? You know, they're practicing their own minority religion. You're not dealing with a Hindu or a Buddhist or something like that. This is an ideological conquest. And basically what they're saying through all of this is we've ideologically conquered this city. And it's kind of, you know, we're kind of throwing our hands in the air at this point. Who approved this? You know, who's financing this? I'm starting to get mixed reports. I have a guy that I know pretty well running for Sugarland City Council. I texted him immediately on it. He tried to get some answers. He's actually speaking tomorrow morning at our men's group, bright and early Saturday morning.